Welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to visit a recent eBay purchase. Some of you out there might recognize this pen from the distinctive clip. It's a Conway Stewart. The stylish C and S on the clip, the kind of diamond shape in the clip, the little diamond end at the end of the clip. So this is a model that I didn't really know much about, and when I saw it on eBay, we'll show you that auction, I couldn't pass it up, especially at the price that it was. This is a Model 106. The Model 106 was made from 1959 to 1968, and it had a press sack filler mechanism. One of the other interesting things I find is the breather hole is located very low here on the cap. It's a pull-off cap. You got your metal clutch ring here. You have your semi-hooded nib. And I have to admit, it's a nice-looking nib. Conway Stewarts have never disappointed me. Looks like we may have to do some tuning on those. Amazing what you can find out when you put it under the camera. I should have put a loop on that. So this is a drive-by. We're going to take the pen apart. We're going to restore it and do what we need to do to get it in writing order, but that's where we started. For my repeat viewers, you know I enjoy my books, and this is an excellent book on Conway Stewart pens. It's a real coffee table book. It's not inexpensive, but if you can find it on auction, or sometimes it can be at a better price. The set of pages on the 106 and various models from the 60s. And of course it goes into the fact that these were injection molded pens. And the press sack filler was something that they introduced, and they made a number of models on it. Here's a little ad from it, and here's a series of pens that had the press sack fillers in it. The 106 is on the far left, but then they made more higher end versions over time in the 60s. And as you can see, they came in a variety of colors and metal caps. The pen looked like after I took it apart and cleaned it up. This is the filling mechanism. It'll need a sack. So the way this is designed, I'll just put a sack here at that thin part at the end of this section. And then that'll fit inside of here. And this lever will go in the right way versus the way it was when I got the pen. So then this lever will be used to push down to fill the pen. It cleaned up very well. This is a nice heavy chrome plating on these parts. They were a little bit corroded and dirty when I got them, but now they cleaned up very nicely. So I just wanted to give you a show of how it looked like all taken apart. You know, I flushed out the section, the nib, the feed, and as usual with Conway Stewarts, the metal parts are heavily gold plated, so they seem to survive very well and clean up very well. So we're going to get a sack in here and see how this little baby writes. Passed since the pen was taken apart and cleaned. So I reinserted this pressure bar in the right spot. And one thing I noticed is it had a tendency to move around. There was no way to secure it. So when I put the pressure bar in, I put a little bit of glue at the back here. I've let that dry for a couple days. So now the pressure bar is easy to depress, and it doesn't slide around in there like it was before. We've put a sack on the section. So I've done my usual, putting the sack on with a little bit of glue on the nipple here at the end of the section. And then after that dries for a day, I put a coat of shellac on, which is something new that I've started. I had a couple sacks that are many years old that came loose here. So I figure this will help secure them and also seal them. So that's why I'm now doing that. So before we assemble this pen and get it ready to write, whenever I insert a new sack into a pen, I coat the sack with talc. For a couple of reasons. Number one, it makes certain that it dries all the liquid that may be there, but there shouldn't be anything here. The other reason from my perspective is it helps it slide in, and I sized this so it would be a pretty tight fit. So as usual, I like to line up the pressure bar with the nib so I can watch how the ink comes in. So there we are lined up, and you can see how the sack fits very nicely into that mechanism. So this is just a press fit. And what I was concerned about was the shellac. Because it's a very tight fit, so I'm going to have to grind off some of that shellac. And I just took some sandpaper and tried to smooth out that bottom a little bit. Like I said, this filling mechanism is a very tight fit. It was a little bit of pressure to get it off, so that's going to slide on there. We're going to do that off camera. So that just needed to press on. It's not something I could have done in front of the camera. So now it's put together very nicely, and as you can see, the springs back very nicely, so I should get a good fill in there. Number 16 bladder worked fine in here. One of the other things that I've started doing is, this is a threaded piece down here at the bottom, and to me, it's always good just to put a little lubrication on the thread. So I just put just a tab of silicone grease there. And that lets the threading just feel nicer. So that goes on there very well. It caps well. So I think it's time to ink it up and put nib to paper and see how this performs. Let's put the Conway Stewart in perspective of some other pens that you may or may not be familiar with. There's the 109, the Parker 51, Pilot 78G, and a Lamy Safari. I got these because they looked similar. Obviously, the 106 and the 51 competed in the same time frame. I just wanted to compare nibs and sections later on. Now we're looking at the pens posted, and the 109 is pretty similar, and you can see how the section is similar. There's a fully hooded nib on the 51 and a semi-hooded on the 109, but this one gets wider very quickly, so that angle is greater, and as you move up it gets a little bit, for bigger hands it would probably work a little bit better. And that's, the 78G is just your standard 78G, and of course your Lamy Safari is also in this mix. Let's take a close-up of the sections and nibs. I think it's always good to take a look at it from this perspective. You notice the clutch ring on the slip caps on both the 51 and the 109. These are all very different nibs, but it's always interesting to compare them, but it's really what the nib touches the paper that matters. So as I mentioned before, this is just a pull-off cap. It's a very light pen. We'll give you those weights. It posts very deeply. Fits nice in the hand. It's a little bit of a small grip here at the end, but certainly not unusual and typical of pens of this time frame. Nice wet line. It feels a little scratchy. You might hear that. But overall, I'm happy with the way that it writes, considering how the nib looked. That's why I didn't want to do too much work on the nib. We'll just do a little smoothing on my famous board here. Some people just only use this really fine side, which I totally understand that, but I just like a little bit of roughness to start with. It certainly took out some of the bite. I mean, this writes very well. I'm impressed. I kind of expected a little bit of a medium to broad line. So let's take a look at... Nah, it really doesn't have any flexes. What I wouldn't expect from a small nib like this, or a small exposed nib, but it certainly writes smooth. I mean, this could be a great daily writer, everyday writer. You can hold it anywhere. There's no step up or no threads to deal with, which is one of the advantages of a push cap. And this is a nice ink. It's darker than I expected it to be, but it still has some interesting color to it. I think you can hear that now sounds pretty nice. And this is Fabriano paper, which has a little bit of texture on the surface, so it's going to accentuate any noise from the nib. So overall, I'm extremely happy with this pen. It was a very reasonable price. I enjoyed working on it and putting it together. That's always fun. So hopefully you've enjoyed another look at an interesting pen from an era gone by. In the 50s, very competitive. The ballpoint was taken over, so I think pen manufacturers worked to try to make the pens easier to use and also less expensive to compete against a less expensive writing instrument. And this is a good example of it. I have another one that's later on in Conway Stewart's time frame, and we'll see how they did even more changes later on. So may you have many great writing experiences. May they bring you pleasure. And enjoy your life. Bye.